Back on April 8th, 2026, the story we all heard was one of a perfect military operation. A lightning-fast campaign against Iran, Operation Epic Fury, that supposedly went off without a hitch. But, as is so often the case, the official story of triumph, well, it masks a much, much messier reality. So let's pull back the curtain and see how this decision to go to war really went down.
And that message came straight from the top, from the Secretary of War himself, Pete Hegseth. The picture painted for all of us was one of just absolute success. We're talking Iran's navy at the bottom of the sea, their air force totally wiped out, their missile program just gone. The whole narrative was, this was a clean, decisive victory. End of story.
But you have to ask, right? Was it really that simple? Was this a decision everyone was on board with, backed by solid intelligence? Well, everything we know now points to a big, fat no. And to really get why, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back 2 weeks before a single bomb was dropped.
See, this whole story, it doesn't start on a battlefield. It starts in the White House Situation Room with a very secret meeting. A meeting that would basically set the entire course for war.
So, on February 11th, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shows up. And by all accounts, he's there for a hard sell. Now, this meeting was kept super small, right? They were trying to keep it from leaking, and interestingly, Vice President J.D. Vance wasn't even there. He was out of the country. And look, Netanyahu wasn't just there for a friendly chat. He was there to pitch a really, really audacious plan directly to President Trump.
And wow, what a plan it was. I mean, this was a 4-part strategy that was just breathtaking in its scope. Step 1, take out Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Just kill him. Step 2, completely dismantle Iran's military and their ability to fight back. But then it gets even wilder. The plan was for Mossad to help kick off a massive popular uprising inside Iran, which would lead to the final goal. Step 4, total regime change. We're talking about installing a brand new secular government.
Now, President Trump was apparently pretty intrigued by this, but he turned to his own intelligence team and said, hey, look this over. And their assessment of Netanyahu's grand plan, well, let's just say it was not great. They basically said, yeah, the first 2 parts, killing the leader, destroying the military, we can probably do that. But those last 2 parts, that was a whole different story. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the feedback was just brutally honest. You have the head of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, who looks at this idea of a popular uprising and regime change and describes it with one single devastating word, farcical. He's basically saying it's a complete fantasy, totally detached from what's actually happening on the ground.
And he wasn't the only one thinking that. Secretary of State Marco Rubio hears the CIA's take and, well, he doesn't mince words either. He sums up that whole regime change idea in a, let's say, a much more direct way. So, you get the picture, right? The president's top experts had made it absolutely crystal clear what they thought.
So all this skepticism from the experts, it just creates this huge split inside the president's inner circle. And the debate that kicks off, it wasn't just about military tactics. No, this was a straight-up clash of 2 totally different ways of seeing the world.
And this really sets up the 2 sides of the argument perfectly. On one side, you've got the hawk, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. His thinking was, look, a war with Iran is going to happen eventually. It's inevitable. So we might as well do it now, on our terms. But then on the other side, you have the skeptic, Vice President J.D. Vance. And he's sounding all the alarms, warning about total chaos in the region, massive casualties, burning through all of our weapons, and on top of all that, basically betraying the voters who wanted no new wars.
Okay, so let's just recap for a second. You've got a plan that your own CIA director is calling farcical. You've got your top advisors completely split down the middle, so why on earth did the president decide to go ahead with the attack anyway?
Well, the answer, it seems, wasn't in any intelligence report. It really came down to the president himself. See, his second-term team was really different from his first. The first-term folks were always trying to kind of manage him. But this new team, they saw him as this great man of history, a guy who'd survived indictments, a conviction, even being shot, and just kept beating the odds. So there was this real belief in his gut feeling, a deference to his intuition. And nothing captures this better than this one quote. Just a few weeks before the war, Tucker Carlson, who himself was against this kind of thing, he asks the president, how do you know a war with Iran is going to be okay? And the president's answer says it all, because it always is. I mean, that's it right there. The whole decision was driven by that kind of gut instinct and just unshakable self-confidence.
So it all comes down to this one final meeting on February 26th. The president goes around the room one by one, and what people said is so telling. Even the ones who were against it basically fell in line. You had J.D. Vance saying, "Look, I think this is a bad idea, but if you want to do it, I'll support you." Then Rubio sort of shifts the goalpost, right? He says, well, if we're talking regime change, no. But if we're just talking about destroying their missile program, okay, we can do that. Even the chief of staff, Susie Wiles, basically deferred to whatever the president felt was necessary. So in the end, nobody was going to stand up and stop it.
And that was it. The very next day, at 3:38 p.m., just 22 minutes before the military's deadline, the order came down from Air Force One. Operation Epic Fury is approved. No aborts. Good luck. Just like that. The debate was over, the decision was made, the war with Iran was on. But hold on, because the story isn't quite over. There's one last, pretty ironic twist to all of this. And it centers on the one person in the administration who fought the hardest against this war in the first place.
So, in this really wild turn of events, Vice President J.D. Vance, the guy who argued over and over again that this war would be a total disaster, he ends up becoming the key person trying to end it. When Pakistan started trying to mediate a peace, Vance was suddenly front and center as a negotiator. In fact, the Iranians apparently preferred talking to him over anyone else, probably because they knew he was the one who never wanted the fight to begin with.
So when you look at the whole story of Operation Epic Fury, from that secret pitch to the deep divisions in the cabinet to a final decision that was based almost entirely on instinct, it really leaves us with this huge question, doesn't it? In the Oval Office, where does a leader's gut instinct end and just a massive high-stakes gamble begin? It's a question that really gets to the heart of how these world-changing decisions are actually made.